Assalamualaikum and hello everyone. For today's ECO120 lesson, my friends and I would like to present about inflation that had occurred in Switzerland from 2013 to 2020 by focusing on fiscal policy methods. This presentation will be delivered by myself, namely Nurul Akilah binti Ismail, Nur Ardiana Yasmin binti Ahmad Zairi, Nur Irdina Iman binti Muhammad Azlan, Nur Fatiha binti Khairul Aman, and lastly Nur Zulaika binti Zainal Abidin. The content that we will share in this presentation includes the first is an introduction. In this introduction, we will explain the purpose of this report and the concept of inflation itself. In addition, the background for the country we have chosen, which is Switzerland, as well as the inflation data about the country, will also be explained in this presentation. Not forgetting the inflation issues in Switzerland, the effects and ways to overcome inflation will also be explained in this presentation. Finally, additional information about inflation in Switzerland are the proposed measures from our own perspective as well as our overall statement about the report will be shared.
For introduction, our purpose for this report is policy guidance. It is an important instrument for central banks and governments to develop efficient monetary policies that will reduce inflation and encourage growth. Next is the techniques for inflation, monetary and fiscal policy are the two strategies available for dealing with inflation. We use the fiscal policy method for the purpose of this research.
Now let's move to the concept of inflation. Definition of inflation is an increase in the general price level of goods and services in the economy. Inflation is also an indication of the value of money. A rise in the general price level, meaning that decline in the value of money in society. Next is the Consumer Price Index (CPI), is typically used to calculate the inflation rate. The Consumer Price Index (CPI) records changes in the cost of a certain group of goods or services that are often bought by households, such as food and fuel. Here I also include the important things for us to know about inflation. Firstly, is purchasing power is one of the important things for us to know about inflation. Over time, inflation reduced the price of money.
Hi, my name is Nur Ardiana Yasmin binti Ahmad Zairi. I'm gonna talk about background of the Switzerland. Switzerland is a small mountain country located in the middle of Europe. This landlocked country is about the size of New Jersey and it is between France and Italy. It is also bordered by Austria and Germany. Switzerland also shares borders with 5 countries and contains 6% of Europe's fresh water. You know what? Monte Rosa Heights is a famous place in Switzerland. Monte Rosa Heights that is located near Zermatt. Monte Rosa is rounded, snow-covered massif of the Pennine Alps lying on the frontier between Switzerland and Italy. The Monte Rosa Heights stand at 283 meters above sea level. The second one is about demographic profile in Switzerland. 8.5 million people live in Switzerland. The central pillar towns in Switzerland's economic agglomeration. However, 4.8% of the population now live in the urban areas. Around half of the urban population live in the 5 largest conurbations. 8.5 million. Switzerland is among the world's wealthiest, advanced, and highly developed free market economies. In terms of economic sector, the Switzerland economy is similar to that of undeveloped countries. Switzerland per capita GDP is among the highest in the world. The services sector contributes significantly to the country's strong economic performance. The European Union is Switzerland's primary trade partner. So that's all for background of the Switzerland. Thank you.
Now, these are the inflation data of Switzerland. I will explain these 2 figures now. Okay, let's look at the figure 1. The image displays inflation data for Switzerland during a 10-year period from 2030 to 2022. Using the bar graph in figure 1, it can be seen that while inflation decreased in 2050, it increased in 2022. Now, let's look at the figure 2. Switzerland's inflation rate from 2030 to 2022 is displayed in figure 2. As you can see, the section on inflation rate indicates that at 2.84%, 2022 had the highest rate. The lowest inflation rate, negative 1.14%, was recorded in 2050.
Okay, so next for the issue related to the inflation is, like many other nations, Switzerland was dealing with a variety of inflation-related trends and problems as of my last update in the January 2022. The first one is the low inflation environment where Switzerland has historically had lower inflation than a large number of other advanced countries. Although actual rates have frequently been lower, the Swiss National Bank (SNB) targets an annual inflation rate of around 2%. The second one is about impact of currency strength, where trends in inflation may be impacted by the Swiss franc CHF strength. Lower import costs are generally associated with stronger francs, which may result in lower inflation rates.
Among the effects of inflation on consumer behavior is large. The diagram on the side very clearly shows that there are many people who have reduced their spending on non-essential items and save money when they are responsible for their own expenses. In addition, the unequal distribution of income can also be part of the impact of inflation on Switzerland. For the fixed income group will decrease, while for the flexible income group, they will earn higher income with higher prices of goods and services. This matter is related to the entrepreneur. This is said to be so because in a country like Switzerland, where inflation is an issue, the entrepreneur's goods will be sold at a higher price than usual, and to regular workers who only receive a fixed salary will earn a lower salary than before. For example, government employees. Apart from that, borrowers and creditors can also influence the impact of inflation on Switzerland. This is said to be so because creditors experience a decrease in the value of the money they receive in the future due to inflation, which erodes the purchasing power of money over time. It is important to understand how inflation works for several reasons. For example, people, companies, and governments must understand how inflation affects their capacity to plan for retirement, buy goods and services, or set aside money for spending.
Now we move to how to overcome the problem of inflation. Okay, so one strategy for preventing inflation in a nation is the methods of fiscal policy. The government should have a plan in place for fiscal policy that employs contractionary measures to create a surplus budget. For instance, the government can lower spending and raise tax. The International Monetary Fund (IMF) claims that Switzerland's fiscal policy finds a balance between maintaining fiscal space for upcoming increase in spending pressures and avoiding drastic cuts that could harm the economic recovery. In 2024, the total fiscal surplus was equal to 0.5% of GDP. However, the pressure on spending is growing due to additional costs associated with infrastructure, security, climate change, and population growth. The IMF states that while the financial sector is strong, special attention needs to be given to the risks associated with the commercial real estate market. It is critical that official data on the housing market and other tools for actively lowering bank risk be made available. One of the main elements of the IMF economic policy monitoring activities is regular evaluation of the economic and financial situation of each member country within the limits of the Article IV consultation.
I'm back again. I'm gonna talk about related information about Switzerland. Firstly, the Swiss federal budget is the Swiss Confederation annual revenue and expenditures. Budget expenditures, which are issues annually by the government and must be approved by parliament, reflect the country fiscal policy. You know what? In 2010, Switzerland federal budget total 62.8 billion Swiss francs, accounting for 11.35% of the country's GDP. In 2014, Switzerland federal budget was 66.353 billion Swiss francs, accounting for 8.63% of the country's GDP. However, looking at the past budget, the Swiss corporation expenditures have increased from 7% of GDP in 1960 to 9.7% in 1990 and 10.7% in 2010. These two sectors has grown from 35% in 1990 to 48.2% in 2010. And the Federal Department of Finance predicts that by 2015, they will account for more than half of the federal budget spending. On the other hand, through the same periods, spending on agriculture and national defense decreased significantly from 36.5% to 12.4%. So that's me for related information about the Switzerland.
Here are recommendations how to solve problem inflation in Switzerland. Like in any other nation, Switzerland inflation presents several difficulties for decision makers in government, business, and consumer advocacy. Effective inflation management necessitates an extensive strategy. There are some recommendations to help Switzerland deal with inflation. To manage inflation, the Swiss National Bank (SNB) may change interest rate. By lowering borrowing expenditure, rising interest rate can contribute to the reduction of inflation. Other than that, diversify for your income. Finding method to conserve and minimize costs is crucial during period of high inflation, but is rising your income. Adding another job or part-time work to your income can help you diversify and keep up with growing expenses. Furthermore, you have a safety net in case you are laid off. Examine your abilities and see whether there is a change to launch your next side project. If you have spare space in your house, consider listing a room on Airbnb. Alternatively, if you enjoy posting your collection of images or are an experienced content writer, you may use Squarespace to launch your blog. Another recommendation is fiscal policy measures that can control government spending and tax adjustment. To decrease overall demand in the economy, the government can cut back on public spending and target taxes on brief tax increases may be able to reduce excessive demand and spending. In general, there are a lot of ways to deal with the issue of inflation within our nation. However, there will be times when we may not be able to avoid the inflation problem. For instance, during a conflict between nations from which we purchase goods. This is said because during a battle between the nation from whom we import product, our nation will import fewer items overall since it prioritizes satisfying the need of its citizens. The price of items sold in our nation will rise when there is a shortage of import. As a result, we must be conscious of the present inflation issue. In conclusion, this has clearly shown every aspect of inflation that exists in Switzerland. The definition and idea of inflation itself are among them. Furthermore, the report provides background information about Switzerland. Switzerland inflation statistics have also been explained. Never forget the topic of Swiss inflation, which is the focus of the current study, and lastly, the effect and solutions to the inflation issue. Several actual input have been gathered from the report we have written. For instance, plan your expenses. Comprehending inflation enables people to be better plan their annual expenses.
Similarly, it makes more sense to handle asset, saving, and so on. Concerning education and awareness, researching inflation can help people become more knowledgeable about the state of the economy and how it impacts their daily life.